Yo, Headliner Nation, what is going on? Kyle back with the Fantasy Headliners, and today's video is all about finding the next Cooper Kupp. You guys have been asking, I see it in the comments, I see it on Twitter, I see it in the live shows. People always say, Kyle, who is the next Cooper Kupp? Well, today we're going to dive into it and see if we can find that guy in 2022 football. But before we jump into it, hit the like button, because if this video gets, let's say, 1,500 likes, I'm going to give away another draft guide to somebody down in the comments below. So hit the like button, comment down below, and I'm going to pick somebody at 1,500 likes. The videos have been absolute bangers as of recent, so I expect you all to be hitting that like button so we can give away a draft guide. But we have a winner for last video that I did, and Michael Wellington is going to be getting himself a draft guide from my 3 fantasy players you must have in 2022. We ended up surpassing 1,000 likes over on that video, so we need to go ahead and get Mike his draft guide for winning with a random comment. Michael, email us, info@thefantasyheadliners.com, from the email associated with your YouTube account, and we will get that taken care of for you. But moving on now, finding the next Cooper Kupp. And I've been asked this question a whole lot, and some of you may or may not heard some of my responses, because my response so far has been, I don't know if there is a next Cooper Kupp, but I decided to put together a video on it to figure out if he is out there this season. But there is some criteria that I have insulated here to kind of try and go about finding that guy and understanding what would it take to be the next Cooper Kupp. So hit the like button, subscribe if you're new here, and let's jump straight into the content. And let's take a look first at, like, what are we looking for? So when we're looking for the next Cooper Kupp, what are some of the things that we need to find to be able to draft him? Well, first and foremost for me, pass production. Cooper Kupp, coming into last season, had shown us that he had the ability to produce, and maybe not at a super high level, but at a level that was fantasy relevant for multiple years. Supporting cast, he had guys around him last season that could help keep the pressure off and understand that, hey, this is a guy that is going to take some looks away, so I don't have to be the guy all the time. But the path to volume was still there. So is he the wide receiver 1? Is he the guy, but there's still enough around him to kind of help make sure that he doesn't have cornerback 1 coverage all the time? Or do they move him around in the formation? What do they do with him? Okay, top QB. You got to have a top QB to be the next Cooper Kupp. He got Matthew Stafford last year, and look what happened. Offensive power, you got to be able to go out there and have an offense that can go gangbusters and put up the type of points and the type of plays that you need to reach wide receiver 1 status. Draft value. This one's very important, because you could sit here and say the next Cooper Kupp is going to be a Jamar Chase, a Justin Jefferson, a Stephon Diggs, whatever it may be. But you also have to realize that Cooper Kupp last year in most drafts was being drafted anywhere between the 4th and the 6th round. So where does his draft value lie? And then skill set. Does he have the skill set to put together the type of season that Cooper Kupp did last year? Now, there are several players excluded from this for multiple reasons. I'm taking out guys that have had multiple top finishes. So guys that have been up as wide receiver 1s maybe multiple times, or guys that we've seen be top fantasy assets in the past that we drafted as such. Age 28 or older. Last season, Cooper Kupp was in his age 28 year. So if you're above 28, we are not going to be going with you, because you're not considered that Cooper Kupp type breakout that we saw last year. Oh, and you have to have an ADP that is between the 4th and 6th round. So if your ADP is earlier than the 4th or after the 6th, you don't count, because again, that was that nice even spot for Cooper Kupp where we drafted him last season. So the guys that we have removed from this equation: Marquise Brown, Chris Godwin, Amari Cooper, Brandon Cooks, Michael Thomas, Cortland Sutton, Allen Robinson, Adam Thielen, Hunter Renfrow, and Juju Smith Smith-Schuster. So for Marquise Brown, we know DeAndre Hopkins is coming back, and that you've got Zach Ertz there. You still got Kyler Murray, who's going to be running the football quite a bit. You've got James Conner, who was actually really good in the passing game last year, even though he didn't see a ton of volume. So for me, I'm leaving Marquise Brown out because he's not really the guy that could take that type of step that Cooper Kupp did. Chris Godwin's coming back off an injury. Amari Cooper is outside some of the thresholds that we put down there. Brandon Cooks, same thing. He's been around too long at this point and has had too many good seasons. Michael Thomas coming off an injury and has been too good at certain years. Courtland Sutton, the reason I don't have Courtland Sutton, and we're going to talk about it, is because Jerry Jeudy is on the list. So we'll talk about that a little bit more as things move forward. Allen Robinson, again, already has some top finishes and is outside other thresholds at this point. Adam Thielen, and he also plays with the Cooper Kupp. Adam Thielen is outside some of the thresholds. Hunter Renfrow doesn't fit into all the areas, and his ADP is outside of the top 6 rounds. And the same thing goes for Juju Smith-Schuster. He's had top fantasy finishes already in his career. When he was in Pittsburgh, he was a guy that was being drafted as such, and he just falls outside of that round 6 threshold. So who are the guys that we are taking a look at to possibly be the next Cooper Kupp? Here we go. DJ Moore, Mike Williams, Jerry Jeudy, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Gabe Davis, Darnell Mooney, and Elijah Moore. Those are the guys that are in between the 4 to 6 round mark that fit inside the criteria of age, not having huge past production seasons, and being guys that are in situations where potentially could take that next step forward. So what do I call this? I call this the Kupp check. Okay? The Kupp check. Again, past production, supporting cast, path to volume, top quarterback, offensive power, draft value, and skill set. Do each of these guys have those areas, and do they hit the mark? Let's go ahead and dive into the first one. It's going to be DJ Moore for me. Let's take a look here. Starting at 2021, last season was the wide receiver 19 with 191 fantasy points. Right now, his current ADP places him at 49 overall and the wide receiver 18 off the board. Pass production, yes, absolutely has that pass production for me. He has 3 seasons of 1,000 or more receiving yards, but he's never quite taken that huge leap because he's never quite had the touchdowns. He's also got 3 years of 100 targets. So we know that this is a guy that gets volume, but he really hasn't taken that step to fantasy stardom and become a guy that is like, oh yeah, we need to have this guy as a wide receiver 1. So I definitely kind of think he fits that mold there with what we've been talking about with Cooper Kupp. What about supporting cast? I do believe that he has the supporting cast there necessary because of what they do. You have Christian McCaffrey, who is a guy that in the slot, or is a guy that in the backfield has worked his way to being a guy that helps with those short routes, all right? So that helps take some of the pressure off some of the intermediate routes because you've got linebackers keying on him. And then you've got Robbie Anderson, who stretches the field. And yeah, Robbie Anderson might not be a top fantasy asset himself, but his skill set and what he does helps the offense be better. He lengthens the field. CMC keeps the field shorter. It leaves that intermediate part of the field wide open for DJ Moore. So you've got those two there. And I do believe that Terrace Marshall, if he takes a step forward this year, could be a huge help to keeping pressure off DJ Moore as well. What about path to volume? Well, 100% he's got the path to volume because look at him. Look what he has done over the course of his career, and look at the people that are around him. Even though they are good supporting cast, other than CMC, there's nobody to take away that type of volume with him. And keep in mind that with a healthy Christian McCaffrey back in 2019, DJ Moore still had 135 targets, 87 receptions for 1,175 receiving yards. So even if Christian McCaffrey gets his, DJ Moore still has enough to get volume as well. So his path to volume is 100% there for me. Now, obviously, the top quarterback is not there. Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, we don't have either of those things. Either of those things don't match top quarterback as of right now. So he doesn't have the top quarterback. Offensive power, even with Christian McCaffrey back, I don't believe this is an offense that is going to be fast-paced, hard-hitting, throwing the football, getting after you, pedal to the metal. It's not the offensive power, and it doesn't have the offensive weapons behind it to be that type of a top offensive team that's going to give you the volume needed to reach Cooper Kupp status. For draft value, I really don't have DJ Moore set in at draft value right now. I love DJ Moore, but the reason I don't have him there is because a lot of people, if you're going as like a heavy running back type of start, where you're taking maybe 2 or 3 running backs early, possibly grabbing a tight end, DJ Moore is kind of in that blind spot where some of you might be drafting him as your wide receiver 1, and I'm not fully down with DJ Moore as my wide receiver 1. So draft value, he's a little early for me right now to move forward with him being a draft value. But again, depending on where he finishes, not necessarily against it either. I would just like him as my wide receiver 2. And then for skill set, absolutely. I think that out of everybody on this list, the DJ Moore is probably the one that most closely resembles Cooper Kupp and his skill set, because we've seen DJ Moore win deep down the field in his career. I mean, he was one of the top deep passing wide receivers just a couple of seasons ago. That disappeared last year, but we also saw Cooper Kupp kind of move from being this really only where he was a slot guy that was winning those short yardage to being a guy that was winning all over the field last year. And DJ Moore also has that same capability. So for everybody on this list, I do believe DJ Moore is probably one that has the closest resemblance and skill set to Cooper Kupp. Now, if DJ Moore was on a different team, we might be saying DJ Moore is the guy this year. But unfortunately, he doesn't check all the boxes. DJ Moore doesn't get all the boxes for me. So we'll move on to the next guy, Mike Williams. Mike Williams from the Los Angeles Chargers, just did a video on him the other day. Top 3 players must have that I got to get in my drafts. He was included in that. Make sure that you watch that video if you haven't seen it yet. But let's go through the Kupp check on Mike Williams. In 2021, he was the wide receiver 10. So this is his only wide receiver 1 finish. So I allowed him to stay within the category here because Cooper Kupp also had 1 wide receiver finish prior to his huge breakout last season. So I allowed Mike Williams to stay in here. His current ADP slots him in at 51 overall and as the wide receiver 19. Now, Mike Williams also barely misses that 28-year-old threshold. He's 28 years of age right now, so he's probably the closest in age to Cooper Kupp and the closest in past production. So both of these guys have like 1 wide receiver 1 finish. They both have had seasons where, yes, they have been fantasy viable, but maybe not guys where you're looking at and say, yes, I have to have them. And that's what kind of makes them sneaky good picks, right? Because they're guys that we have seen them do it before, but they're not necessarily the guy to do it. Supporting cast. He's got the supporting cast there. Keenan Allen is there. I mean, you've got Austin Eckler there. You've got good supporters in Palmer and Guyton. You've got guys around you that can absolutely help out and keep you from being the guy. But that also means that I can't check off your path to volume because of how many targets go to Keenan Allen and go to Austin Eckler. For Mike Williams to be the next Cooper Kupp, he would really have to become the wide receiver 1 on this team, and he would need to be utilized as he was at the beginning of last year. And again, I broke that down with route trees and charts and production. I mean, the video I did the other day for 3 must-have players that Mike Williams is in, if you haven't seen it yet, after this video is done, you've got to check it out. Does he have a top quarterback? Yes, he does. Justin Herbert, one of the best young quarterbacks in the league. Do they have the offensive power? Heck, yes, they do. They're going to be playing in a division where they're going to be throwing it a ton. So they've got the offensive power. We've seen them do it before. We've seen them put up those numbers. All right. This is a team that's going to throw the ball. They're going to throw it often. And Justin Herbert is the guy to lead that team. Now, draft value. Again, I've kind of got him just outside that draft value area that we may have seen Cooper Kupp at last year. If Mike Williams is your wide receiver 2, I'm fine with it. If Mike Williams is not your wide receiver 2, if you draft him as your wide receiver 1, that is where I am concerned, because Cooper Kupp last year was typically a wide receiver 3 for most fantasy teams that drafted him. And as far as skill set goes, I would love to mark this off, because as we saw in the first 5 weeks of last season, Mike Williams has the same skill set and can be utilized in the same way that Cooper Kupp is. However, he hasn't been in his career. And that's why I'm not going to mark off skill set just yet, because I need to see them do that for a full season. Now, I will say this about Mike Williams. Even though he misses on three of the boxes here that we can't check off, he is probably the one that I would say has the best opportunity, because he could become the wide receiver 1. He could end up becoming a great draft value, and we've seen his skill set utilized before. And if the Los Angeles Chargers are smart enough and they move the game plan around to make sure that they can do that, then heck yeah, you've gotten that skill set now where he can be. So the guy that's probably one of the closest to doing it would be Mike Williams. So keep an eye on him. All right, heading over to Jerry Jeudy now for the Kupp check. Well, I can't mark off past production because Jerry Jeudy hasn't really done enough in his career yet to really say, yep, he's got the past production. Decent 2020, but he missed 6 games last year. So again, hasn't really had that there. Supporting cast, yes, he's got the supporting cast there with him. He's got Courtland Sutton on the other side, KJ Hamler. You've got Melvin Gordon. You've got Javonte Williams. You've got Albert. Are you okay? So you've got plenty of guys to keep defenses off balance. But again, that's also one of the reasons why I can't mark off path to volume, because you've got the supporting cast, but we don't know if Jerry Jeudy or Courtland Sutton will be the wide receiver 1. And another issue that we see with this as well is that we know Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon can both help in the passing game, specifically Melvin Gordon. That's something that the Rams didn't have last year. They didn't really have a running back that would, quote unquote, be specifically productive in the passing game. And they also, Tyler Higbee is okay, but Albert, are you okay, is pretty darn good. And we could see him really have a breakout season. So another reason why that path to volume may not be there for me. Top quarterback, yes, you do. Russ is going to be cooking in that Denver kitchen this year. Absolutely, I'm marking off the top quarterback comparison there. Russell Wilson is a guy that we've seen support Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf in the past. We're going to go with it. Offensive power, yes, with Russell Wilson being there now, this is a team that can take a big step forward in terms of how good they are on the offensive side of the football. They're in that tough AFC West where they're going to be throwing the football a lot, and that makes the opportunity for some really big volume for Jerry Jeudy to potentially come. Draft value. Now we're starting to get to a point where draft value is becoming a yes for me, because now when you look at Jerry Jeudy, there's really nobody that's drafting Jerry Jeudy as their wide receiver 1. If you're drafting Jerry Jeudy, you are getting him as your wide receiver 2. And as far as skill set goes, heck yes, he marks that box off. Jerry Jeudy has the ability to win in the slot, win on the outside, win on the deep ball, win on those intermediate routes, short, quick burst, speed down the field. I love Jerry Jeudy's skill set. The only thing is what will we see this year? And this is the reason that I included Jerry Jeudy outside and not Courtland Sutton, because when I take a look at it, all of these boxes are marked for Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton, except for the skill set. The skill set for Courtland Sutton would not have popped up, but it did for Jerry Jeudy, because Jerry Jeudy is a guy that I could see going into the slot a little bit more often this year, and watching KJ Hamler go to the outside, and then having Courtland Sutton. Courtland Sutton is more of your prototypical big-bodied wide receiver, a guy that's going to win on the outside, like a T. Higgins for Cincinnati last year. You got Jamar Chase, who's kind of your burner, your speed guy. You know, Courtland Sutton can win down the field, but he's more of the T. Higgins, big-bodied, big guy, fight for those passes, things of that nature. Jerry Jeudy's skill set is a little bit different, and I think it closely resembles Cooper Kupp in a manner that Courtland Sutton does not. So Jerry Jeudy looking pretty good there, but he still doesn't mark all of the boxes. So can Amon-Ra St. Brown mark more of the boxes? Good question, because he doesn't mark the first one. Why? Because yes, He had a great finish to last year, but that's all it was. It was a great finish. It was not a full year worth of production. It was only the last few weeks of the season. Ended up finishing as the wide receiver 27 with 160 fantasy points. Almost all of those came over the last few weeks. His current ADP right now at 70 overall makes him the wide receiver 27. So pass production, not really down with the pass production because, again, it was a very short stint of last year and not an entire year. What about supporting cast? This offense this year is much better than the offenses that we have seen in the past with the Detroit Lions. Now, too bad they didn't still have a Matthew Stafford at the helm instead of a Jared Goff, but it is what it is. So supporting cast, absolutely plenty of weapons around to help him. TJ Hawkinson, they signed DJ Chark. You've got DeAndre Swift. The one thing that does concern me, though, I can't mark off path to volume. And the reason that I cannot mark off path to volume is because we don't know how Amon-Ra St. Brown is utilized without some of those guys around him. And what I mean by that is to begin the season, when you had a healthy DeAndre Swift that was a top 5 running back because of his work in the passing game, and when you had a healthy TJ Hawkinson, Amon-Ra St. Brown was not utilized. And now you've added a DJ Chark to it as well to help take off the top of the field. It sets up well for Amon-Ra St. Brown, and that's why I give him a check mark in the supporting cast. But I can't check off the path to volume because I don't know what the path to volume is yet. I also can't mark off top quarterback. Jared Goff is not a bad quarterback. I know some of you will probably disagree with me on that. This is a guy that has led a team to a Super Bowl, that has had really good finishes, that has helped support top fantasy options. But he is not a guy that I fully believe can be a big threat at the position to get the ball to Amon-Ra St. Brown and his supporting weapons enough to make Amon-Ra St. Brown the type of guy that would move all the way up to wide receiver 1. Offensive power, I do think it is there. They have a great offensive line, one of the best in all of football. They're going to be utilizing DeAndre Swift. You've got Jamal Williams to help be your banger in the backfield as well. And I've already mentioned it, TJ Hawkinson, DJ Chark, Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I do believe they have the offensive power and they can do what they need to. But again, without having that top quarterback, it's one of those things where they'll be good on offense. They'll score some points, but Jared Goff just won't be able to help, again, this offense move to where you look at it and say, oh, they're a top 5, top 6, top 7 type of option. Draft value, I mean, he's going to be a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 for a majority of the people that draft him. And then for the skill set, I don't necessarily think the skill set is there because I don't think Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be a guy that is going to win deep down the field the same way that Cooper Kupp did last season. I think he's going to win all over the field in terms of those intermediate routes, but I don't think he reaches the type of area down the field that we would need to have those big plays and those chunk plays to really push him all the way to the top. So for me, Amon-Ra St. Brown is only going to check 3 boxes. So again, still haven't found him possibly. Maybe we have. Maybe there's somebody lurking here. Let's keep going though. Cup check with Gabe Davis now. Talked about him the other day in a breakout video. Really like him. Wide receiver 50 in 2021, scored 103 fantasy points. Current ADP is 73. Overall, wide receiver 29. Pass production is not there. I'm going to be speeding up a little bit because we're getting to like 23 minutes in the video now, and I want to get done within a half an hour. So cup check, pass production, not there. We haven't seen it yet with Gabe Davis. Supporting cast, absolutely. You've got Dawson Knox, Stephon Diggs. You've got guys around you that can help take the pressure off. Path to volume, I'm going to give it there too. I did a video the other day, a breakout video that included Gabe Davis and showed that a path to 120 targets is absolutely obtainable. So there is a path to volume. Does he have a top quarterback? Absolutely. Josh Allen is in there. He is a top quarterback in the NFL. Offensive power, we know the Bills are going to be top 5 in passing this season. We know they're going to be throwing the football, and they're going to throw the football a lot. A very tough AFC. Get ready, buckle up, big-time offense. Draft value, this is a guy that's going as like your wide receiver 3 right now. I'm absolutely on board with that. The draft value is there. Skill set, I'm going to do that as a no because, again, those intermediate routes where Cooper Kupp would win in the slot, I just don't see Gabe Davis as a guy that is going to do that. Let's keep moving right along, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to move into Darnell Mooney now. Now, as far as pass production goes, for Darnell Mooney, I'm going to actually go ahead and check that box off because we've seen some fantastic growth the last couple of years from Darnell Mooney. And last season, really going over 1,000 receiving yards showed us that he had the talent to be productive at the NFL level. Now, as far as supporting cast goes, absolutely not. He does not have the weapons around him to really take the pressure off, especially at the wide receiver position. It does leave a great path to volume, but if he's always going to be the wide receiver one, then what are we going to be getting from him? That is going to be tough to see. That's really, really going to be tough to see. Does he have a top quarterback? No. I love Justin Fields, and I think Justin Fields is going to be very good in his NFL career, but he's not yet. Offensive power, this could end up being one of the worst offensive teams in football this year. I am not excited for them, especially because of how bad their offensive line is going to be. Draft value, again, he starts to knock off that draft value mark because we know that this is a guy that you're taking as like a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. He's going a little bit later. I would rather have Darnell Mooney as my wide receiver 3, though. And from a skill set, I'm not marking that off as of yet because, again, is Darnell Mooney going to be the big playmaker down the field? That's what he kind of looks to be right now. So I would need to see some growth in that area in terms of utilizing his route tree all over. And now that he is the wide receiver 1, we may see that this year, but I haven't seen it as of yet. So for Darnell Mooney, he's only going to check 3 of those boxes for me. So not really in on Darnell Mooney at this point. But what about a Kupp check for the final guy on our list, Elijah Moore? Now, if I'm going to be honest with you, Garrett Wilson is probably a better comp at this point than what Elijah Moore is in terms of what we could get from them. But it is what it is. Elijah Moore is the guy right now, and there's only going to be 2 boxes checked off for Elijah Moore, unfortunately. And we're just going to pop both of them up right now. Pass production isn't there. Decent season last year, but not a full season of it. You've got the supporting cast because they have a ton of weapons around you, but we don't know that path to volume at this point because they've completely redone that offense. Again, they brought in Garrett Wilson. You can't forget that Corey Davis is still there. You drafted Breece Hall. You still have Michael Carter. You brought in 2 veteran tight ends to kind of help there as well. So we don't really know what the path to volume is going to look like for Elijah Moore this year. Top quarterback, hey, listen, if you're breaking down how to catch a cougar, then Zach Wilson might be a top quarterback. But at the NFL level, he hasn't shown that as of yet. Offensive power, they could be there by the end of the season. But again, I've got to see it to believe it. I can't really jump on and say, yes, this is a team that's going to be an offensive powerhouse. Draft value, here's the issue with Elijah Moore and being a draft value. There's other guys in his area that I believe have a higher upside than Elijah Moore, and that is why I'm not checking draft value for him right now. But as far as skill set goes, yes, I will give him the skill set because I do believe Elijah Moore, that is a guy that very similar to what I said earlier in the show, he's got a skill set that can win all over the field. So when I was talking about like a DJ Moore and Jerry Jeudy having that similar type of skill set, Elijah Moore fits right into that mold. So I do believe that he is a guy that would have the ability to play that Cooper Kupp-esque role. Now, what about overall Kupp check? Now, we've seen everybody. We've seen everybody marked off at this point. So if we look at the Kupp check right now, who are some guys that are a possibility, best bets, and then last but not least, who is the next Cooper Kupp? Well, a possibility for me is Mike Williams. I like Mike Williams for several different reasons, believing that he is a guy that could take a huge leap to be a top overall fantasy wide receiver asset. Going all the way to wide receiver 1, probably not. Probably not all the way to wide receiver 1 because, again, you've got Austin Eckler and you've got Keenan Allen there that are going to take away some of that volume. So you would see him need to take a huge step forward to become the main weapon in that offense. I don't know if that could happen. Best bets. So if you look at all of the boxes that we checked off, the guys with the most boxes were Jerry Jeudy and Gabe Davis. They meet the most criteria that we saw from Cooper Kupp taking that step forward last year. So yes, absolutely. He is a guy, boom, both of these guys, Jerry Jeudy and Gabe Davis, could be a guy that we say, yeah, he could go to being a top asset. If I had to take one of these two guys, though, that fits Cooper Kupp the most, it would end up being Jerry Jeudy. He probably fits the Cooper Kupp type of role in his offense the most. But, ladies and gentlemen, the Cooper Kupp of 2022 is nobody. And I have told you that in videos, in live shows already. But I wanted to put it in a format that you could see, watch, listen, and understand, because the season that we saw Cooper Kupp have last year was not a normal season. So for those of you out there saying to me, Kyle, who is the next Cooper Kupp? There isn't one. There is nobody out there this year that is the next Cooper Kupp. Now, if you want to say Kyle, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, guys like that could take a leap up and be the wide receiver one like Cooper Kupp was last year, absolutely. Those are guys, but they're not the value that you got for Cooper Kupp last year. You have to remember that Cooper Kupp was a guy that was going in between rounds 4 and 6. He was being drafted much later in drafts than the top tier guys that we're looking at this year. And if you take a look at those guys within that area and say to yourself, woo, these are the guys in that 4 to 6 area that really have nobody checks every single box. Everybody has certain flaws. Everybody has certain things that when I look at, you say, I don't know if there is a way that you could hit with that. I don't know if there's a way that you could do that. So because of that, there's just a little too much risk there to say this is next year's Cooper Kupp. I think you set yourself up for failure if you try to do that. But I wanted to put it in a way that you could see and understand a little bit better than me just saying to you, there is no Cooper Kupp. So hopefully the video made sense to you. Hopefully you appreciate the content, because if you do like the content, I need you to hit the like button. Leave me a comment down below, because I'll pick somebody when this video gets to 1,000 likes to give a draft guide away to. And subscribe, baby. Don't leave this channel. Do not go anywhere without subscribing. But I'm going to get out of here. All of you stay safe, stay healthy, and I will catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.
Analytics off the chain, all the channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. Y'all stuck on third down. Your content's plain Jane. Headliners on top now. We gonna move and change. Podcast off the rip. Draft guide, so legit. Fantasy world, our game tight. You know we about that chub life. Stuck in a rut and you need some motivation. Head to the channel for this Headliner Nation. I'm a headliner.